Hey there, hi there, ho there, boys and girls. James J. Patterson here, coming to you live from the reading room at Allen Squire Publishing, a small press with big ideas. I am the reluctant scholar. I read slowly. Maybe I have slow eyes, I don't know. When I was younger, I even took a speed reading course. It was terrible. The technique they were teaching didn't work on me. I quit after 2 sessions. I watch people who breeze through a heavy text at lightning speed with the envy that some reserve only for the wealthy. Because I read slowly, I savor every word, every phrase. I have no time or patience with bad writing or bad ideas. One would think that the slowness with which I digest books would put me off the habit, but it only increases my zeal. I chip away at massive tomes. I chip away at massive tomes. Yes, I do. Look at that beast. Okay. I chip away at massive tomes. I can't read for entertainment the way fast readers can. I save my guilty pleasures for other pursuits: sports, alcohol, rock and roll. My attachment to books is sensual as well as intellectual. A friend of mine once broke my concentration to remark that I will caress a book as I read along. I hadn't noticed, but it's true. My hands move constantly over the pages. I love to hold them, feel them. I love the way books smell. I will fold a paperback in two and break the spine. I will bend the spine of a hardback, feeling the turned page rend just enough as it rests loosely in position. Like a favorite old dog, the books I have read and loved hang around, sit in my lap, keep me company. I pull volumes off my shelves that I have combed through 1,000 times, their spines cracked, pages slipping from their moorings, and marked by underlines I have made. I'm fussy about these underlines. I use a sturdy, straight-edged bookmark as an underlining ruler. I have a system of asterisks and paragraph sidelining. I scribble in the margins. Old books made on now antiquated printing presses have text that you can run your fingers across, almost like Braille, to feel the impressions left by the printer's art. I do appreciate a good book cover too, and have shamelessly purchased many a volume just for that reason. But what I crave most is the liberating compensation of such a sublime labor, reading and learning from what I read. Every time I finish a book, I can honestly say I look up from that last page a different man. There's a wonderful writer, Janet Winterson, and she says this: reading is a lifelong collision with minds not like your own. Isn't that great? And why I'm thinking about that is that I was on a first date with my wife before we got married, Rose Solari, and we were at a bookshop, believe it or not. And I, you kind of test each other out those first few times down down the pike. And so I grabbed this book and I walked over to her and I said, "What do you think of this book?" And she goes, "I don't know. I don't know that book. Did it pass the first page test?" The first page test. Well, of course, that's what we do. Forget all the jargon on the front and back of inside flaps and all the quotes and stuff. You read that first page carefully, and you're going to find sentences that sing or don't sing, a message that resonates or doesn't resonate, a voice that is intriguing. You're going to find all that in the first couple of pages of a book. And I've got lots and lots of books that at a good indie bookstore, will have books that you would never have thought of. Yeah, if you go online and buy a book because you know you want it, you read a review and you're going to get it. But when you go to a good indie bookstore, that manager has curated his shelves to the taste of the people who frequent his shop or her shop. And so there's lots of books. So I'm going to read a few first pages. And like Ms. Winterson said, a lifelong collision with minds not like your own. You're going to have that collision on page 1, aren't you? Right? Okay. So there I was in Oxford, England, at the wonderful bookstore there, and Blackwell's, and the clerks will put a little card up saying Janet likes this book or Wilson likes this book, And I put faith in those things. Well, anyway, there was this card that made this book sound absolutely intriguing. And it's called The Muse by Jessie Burton. And she had a bestseller with a book called The Miniatures. I didn't look at it. But anyway, I picked this up, read the first page, took it back, loved it, and I went back to the bookstore to read that little card again because that card had nothing to do with what was in this book. And of course, I realized that the card was for the book above it, not the book I selected. Oh, but it was a happy mistake because this is fabulous. All right, so I'm going to give you the first page here. And Jessie Burton, we're in good hands with her. We're going to open up with a young woman who is from Haiti, and she is working at a shoe store in London. Not all of us receive the ends that we deserve. Many moments that change a life's course, a conversation with a stranger on a ship, for example, are pure luck. And yet, no one writes you a letter or chooses you as their confessor without good reason. This is what she taught me. You have to be ready in order to be lucky. You have to put your pieces into play. When my day came, it was so hot that my armpits had made moons on the blouse the shoe shop supplied to every employee. It don't matter what size, the woman said, dabbing herself with a handkerchief. My shoulders were aching, my fingertips chafing. I stared. Sweat had turned the pale hair at her brow the color of a wet mouse. London heat. It never has anywhere to go. I didn't know it, but this woman was the last customer I would ever have to serve. I'm sorry? Just said, the woman sighed. Any size will do. It was nearing closing time, which meant all the crumbs of dry skin, toe jam we called it, would have to be hoovered out of the carpet. Synth always said we could have molded a whole foot out of those scrapings, a monster to dance a jig on its own. She liked her job at Dolce's Books, Dolce's Shoes, and she got me mine. But within an hour of our shift, I craved the cool of my room, my cheap notebooks, my pencil waiting by the narrow bed. Girl, you got to pick your face up, Synth would whisper, or you're working in the funeral parlor next door. I backed away to the stock cupboard, a place where I would often escape, immune as I was by now to its noxious smell of rubbered soles. I thought I might go in and scream silently at the wall of boxes. Wait, oi, wait, the woman called after me. When she was sure she had my attention, she bent low and slipped off her scuffed pump, revealing a foot that had no toes. Not one, a smooth stump, a block of flesh, resting innocently on the faded carpet. See, she said, her voice defeated, and she kicked off the second shoe to reveal an identical state of affairs. I just stuff the ends with paper, so it don't matter what size you bring. It was a sight. I have not forgotten it. The Englishwoman who showed me her toeless feet. At the time, perhaps, I was repulsed. We always say the young have little truck with ugliness, have not learned to mask shock. I was that young. I wasn't that young, really. 26. I don't know what I did in the moment, but I do recall telling Synth on the way home to the flat we shared off Clapham Common, and her whooping with delighted horror at the thought of those toeless feet. Stumpy McGee, she shouted. She coming to get you, Dilly. And then, with an optimistic pragmatism, at least she wear any shoe she want. Perhaps that woman was a witch coming to herald the change in my path. I don't believe so. A different woman did that. But her presence does seem macabre end to that chapter of my life. Did she see in me a kindred vulnerability? Did she and I occupy a space where our only option was to fill the gap with paper? I don't know. There does remain the very slim possibility that all she wanted was a new pair of shoes. And yet I always think of her as something from a fairy tale, because that was the day that everything changed. What a great opening. You can go anywhere after that opening. Where she does, she quits her job and she goes to work as an assistant curator at an art gallery. And they have just taken possession of a painting with a very dangerous and troubled past. And we're off to the races. So the last few weeks here in the reading room have been kind of a heavy hangs over your head situation. And so I'm trying to lighten it up here with a bunch of different titles. And if my buddy Mike Rawson is out there, or Hank Thomas, You might know, where does this saying, heavy, heavy hangs over your head, come from? First, I thought it was the Marx Brothers. Then I thought, well, maybe it's the Three Stooges. Well, maybe it's Shakespeare. I don't know. I like putting those three together anyway, just for you. Anyway, please like and share this stuff, will you? If you're of a mind, just hit the little button, like it, then maybe share it with your pals. It's nice to get a little crowd going, isn't it? Okay. Next book I'm going to read the first pages from is The Night Train to Lisbon. I was at another wonderful indie store up in Niagara-on-the-Lake, Ontario. And that's the little town where they have the George Bernard Shaw Theatre Festival. And I used to go there every year with my son. And then my wife and I started going. It's just a delight. You get 2 plays a day for 4 or 5 days, and you're done for the year. It's just wonderful. Beautiful little town, too. But anyway, they have a great bookshop there called the Old Niagara Bookshop. And there's a little old lady, just sweet lady, elderly lady, who's been running the place forever. And so I always know that when I go to the Old Niagara Bookshop, I'm going to find stuff I would never have thought of, wouldn't have a clue existed. And the Night Train to Lisbon was a major bestseller in Europe. And it didn't catch on here, I don't think. And so we're going to join a professor on his way to work and see what happens to him. The day that ended with everything different in the life of Raymond Gregorius began like countless other days. At 7:45, he came from the Bundesstrasse and stepped onto Kirchenfeldbruck, leading from the heart of the city to the gymnasium. He did that every workday of the school term, always at 7:45. Once, when the bridge was blocked, he made a mistake in beginning Greek class afterward. That had never happened before, and it never happened again. For days, the whole school talked of nothing but this mistake. The longer the discussion lasted, the more it was thought to be a mistake in hearing. At last, this conviction won out, even among the students who had been there. It was simply inconceivable that Mundus, as everyone called him, would make a mistake in Greek, Latin, or Hebrew. Gregorius looked ahead at the pointed towers of the Historical Museum of the city of Bern, up in the Gruden, and down to the Aire, with its glacier green water. A gusty wind drove low-lying clouds over him, turned his umbrella inside out, and whipped the rain in his face. Now he noticed the woman in the middle of the bridge. She had leaned her elbows on the railing and was reading in the pouring rain what looked like a letter. She must have been holding the sheet with both hands. As Gregorius came closer, she suddenly crumpled the paper, kneaded it into a ball, and threw the ball into space with a violent movement. Instinctively, Gregorius had walked faster and was now only a few steps away from her. He saw the rage in her pale, rain-wet face. It wasn't a rage that could be dumped into words and then blow over. It was a grim rage, turned inward, that must have been smoldering her for a long time. Now the woman leaned on the railing with outstretched arms, and her heels slipped out of her shoes. Now she jumps. Gregorius left the umbrella to a gust of wind that drove it over the railing, threw his briefcase full of school notebooks to the ground, and uttered a string of curses that weren't part of his usual vocabulary. The briefcase opened up, and the notebooks slid onto the wet pavement. The woman turned around. For a few moments, she watched unmoving as the textbooks darkened with the water. Then she pulled a felt-tipped pen from her coat pocket, took 2 steps, leaned down to Gregorius, and wrote a line of numbers on his forehead. "Forgive me," she said in French, breathless and with a foreign accent, "but I mustn't forget this phone number, and I don't have any paper with me." Now she looked at her hands, as if she were seeing them for the first time. "Naturally, I could have," and now, looking back and forth between Gregorius's forehead and her hand, she wrote the number on the back of her hand. I didn't want to keep it. I wanted to forget everything, and when I saw the letter fall, I had to hold on to it." The rain on the thick eyeglasses muddied Gregorius's sight, and he groped awkwardly for the wet notebooks. The tip of the felt pen seemed to slide over his forehead again, but then he realized it was now the fingers of the woman who was trying to wipe away the numbers with a handkerchief. "It is out of line, I know," and now she started helping Gregorius gather up the notebooks. He touched her hand and grazed her knee, and when the two of them reached for the last notebook, they bumped heads. "Thank you very much," he said when they stood facing each other. He pointed to her head. "Did it hurt?" Ah, no. Can I walk a few steps with you? She walks with him to class and sits in on his class. And in the middle of it, she gets up and leaves. And he watches her out the window in a red raincoat walk across the long green lawn of the university and disappears. That after class that day, he goes to the main office and he resigns. Even though he's due to retire, he resigns. And he goes to a bookshop and he buys a book in Portuguese. And he buys a Portuguese dictionary. And he's going to go to Lisbon on the night train tonight. He's going to read and translate this book. And it turns out to be the memoir of an anti-fascist freedom fighter. And oh boy, when he gets to Lisbon, the shit happens. So, like I said, like and share this stuff if you can. And first pages of books are kind of an opening, an opening statement. Sometimes the author sets the stage of his or her place in the universe that you can collude with, And one that does that is this book, The Great Gatsby. And it has probably one of the best first pages you'll ever read. And I think it's famous for it. But anyway, let's meet Gatsby one more time, shall we? And the first sentence of this should be on stone on every building in Washington. In my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me some advice that I've been turning over in my mind ever since. Whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, he told me, just remember that all the people in this world haven't had the advantages that you've had. He didn't say any more, but we've always been unusually communicative in a reserved way, and I understood that he meant a great deal more than that. In consequence, I'm inclined to reserve all judgments, a habit that has opened up many curious natures to me and also made me the victim of not a few veteran bores. The abnormal mind is quick to detect and attach itself to this quality when it appears in a normal person, and so it came about that in college I was unjustly accused of being a politician because I was privy to the secret griefs of wild unknown men. Most of the confidences were unsought. Frequently I have feigned sleep, preoccupation, or a hostile levity when I realized by some unmistakable sign that an intimate revelation was quivering on the horizon. But the intimate revelations of young men, or at least the terms in which they express them, are usually plagiaristic and marred by obvious suppressions. Reserving judgments is a matter of infinite hope. I am still a little afraid of missing something. If I forget that, as my father snobbishly suggested, and I snobbishly repeat, a sense of the fundamental decencies is parceled out unequally at birth. A sense of fundamental decencies is parceled out unequally at birth. After boasting this way of my tolerance, I came to the admission that it has a limit. Conduct may be founded on the hard rock or the wet marshes, but after a certain point, I don't care what it's founded on. When I came back from the East last autumn, I felt that I wanted the world to be in uniform and at a sort of moral attention forever. I wanted no more riotous excursions with privileged glimpses into the human heart. Only Gatsby, the man who gives his name to this book, was exempt from my reaction. Gatsby, who represented everything for which I have an unaffected scorn. If personality is an unbroken series of successful gestures, then there was something gorgeous about him, some heightened sensitivity to the promises of life, as if he were related to one of those intricate machines that registered earthquakes 10,000 miles away. This responsiveness had nothing to do with that flabby impressionability which is dignified under the name of creative temperament. It was an extraordinary gift for hope, a romantic readiness, such as I have never found in any other person, and which is not likely that I shall ever find again. No, Gatsby turned out all right at the end. It is what preyed on Gatsby, what foul dust floated in the wake of his dreams, that temporarily closed out my interest in the abortive sorrows and short-winded elations of men. The abortive sorrows and short-winded elations of men. All right, who's in here? Anybody I know? Maxwell. Leela. How you doing, Leela? Anyway, let's take a tour through the first page of Jean-Jacques Rousseau's The Confessions. He thought he was doing something unique, and he was. And it would be 200 years before everybody would catch on and start taking his confessional style into what we call creative nonfiction. And so we have Jean-Jacques to thank for an awful lot of introspective work that happened 200 years later. You know, I'm an old Voltaire fan. I love me some Voltaire. And Voltaire kind of thought old Jean-Jacques was a bit of a jackass. But I like him. Okay, here we go. Now, this is dated 1712. Okay? I am commencing an undertaking hitherto without precedent, and which will never find an imitator. I desire to set before my fellows the likeness of a man in all truth of nature, and that man, myself. Myself alone. I know the feelings of my heart. I know men. I am not made like any of those I have seen. I venture to believe that I am not made like any of those who are in existence. If I am not better, at least I am different. Whether nature has acted rightly or wrongly in destroying the mold in which she cast me can only be decided after I have been read. Let the trumpet of the day of judgment sound when it will. I will present myself before the sovereign judge with this book in my hand, and I will say boldly, this is what I have done, what I have thought, what I was. I have told the good and the bad with equal frankness. I have neither omitted anything bad nor interpolated anything good. If I have occasionally made use of some immaterial embellishments, this has only been in order to fill a gap caused by my lack of memory. I may have assumed the truth of which I knew might have been true, never of that which I knew to be false. I have shown myself as I was, mean and contemptible, good, high-minded and sublime, according as I was, one or the other. I have unveiled my inmost self, even as thou hast seen it, O eternal being. Gather round me the countless host of my fellow men. Let them hear my confessions, lament for my unworthiness, and blush for my imperfection. Then let each of them in turn reveal, with the same frankness, the secrets of his heart at the foot of the throne, and say, if he dare, I was better than that man. Go get him, Jean-Jacques. But that's stating your case, isn't it? And you've read a lot of books that have a similar statement at the beginning. And he's the one who got it started. Pretty good. All right, so I'm blowing through this pretty quick. Now I'm going to give you, I'm going to read my last little entry here, but before I do, I want to remind you that Alan Squire Publishing is sending out books, and Amazon still isn't. And we don't need Amazon. We don't need with Amazon. You got Alan Squire. Go there. A lot of books are on half price. A lot of great stuff there. And the website, the Alan Squire website, is starting to become like a literary magazine all its own. And you'll find some wonderful content there. Roam around a little bit. And I think it'll make you very happy. All right, now, here he is, the one, the only, Henry Miller. And why they insist on putting naked women on his books, I'll never understand. But naked women, I don't mind it. But Henry is writing here in Paris in 1934. It's the middle of the Great Depression. Nobody calls it that yet. Herbert Hoover, who a lot of people blame for the Depression, his policies, I mean, he kept saying, there's nothing to worry about financially, it's just a little depression. And a journalist in England said, well, if this is a depression, it's a great one. And it was the Great Depression from that day forward. But Miller's living in Paris. He went there to write because it was kind of the romantic thing to do between the wars. And he gets there and he's just down and out. He's living on nothing. And so here he comes. But there's a little piece of permission that he gives us all, especially artists, in this opening, that that resonated with me and changed my life. And here it comes. I am living at the Villa Borghese. There's not a crumb of dirt anywhere, not a chair misplaced. We are all alone here. We're all dead. Last night, Boris discovered that he was lousy. I had to shave his armpits, and even then the itching did not stop. How can one get lousy in a beautiful place like this? No matter. We might never have known each other so intimately, Boris and I, had it not been for the lice. Boris has just given me a summary of his views. He is a weather prophet. The weather will continue bad, he says. There will be more calamities, more death, more despair. Not the slightest indication of any change anywhere. The cancer of time is eating us away. Our heroes have killed themselves, are killing themselves. The hero then is not time, but timelessness. We must get in step, a lockstep, toward the prison of death. There is no escape. The weather will not change. It is now the fall of my second year in Paris. I was sent here for a reason I've not been able to fathom. I have no money, no resources, no hopes. I'm the happiest man alive. A year ago, 6 months ago, I thought that I was an artist. I no longer think about it. I am. Everything that was literature has fallen from me. There are no more books to be written. Thank God. This is not a book. This is libel, slander, defamation of character. This is not a book in the ordinary sense of the word. No, this is a prolonged insult, a gob of spit in the face of art, a kick in the pants to God, man, destiny, time, love, beauty, what you will. I'm going to sing for you a little off key perhaps, but I will sing. I will sing while you croak, and I will dance over your dirty corpse. To sing, you must first open your mouth. You must have a pair of lungs and a little knowledge of music. It is not necessary to have an accordion or a guitar. The essential thing is to want to sing. This, then, is a song. I am singing. It is to you, Tanya, that I am singing. I wish that I could sing better, more melodiously, but then perhaps you would never have consented to listen to me. You have heard the others sing, and they have left you cold. They sang too beautifully, or not beautifully enough. It is the 20-something of October. I no longer keep track of the date. What do you say, my dream of the 14th, November last? There are intervals, but they are between dreams, and there is no consciousness of them left. The world around me is dissolving, leaving here and there spots of time. The world is a cancer eating itself away. I am thinking that when this great silence descends upon all and everyone, music will at last triumph. When into the womb of time everything is again withdrawn, chaos will be restored, and chaos is the score upon which reality is written. You, Tanya, are my chaos. It is why I sing. It is not even I. It is the world dying, shedding the skin of time. I'm still alive, kicking in your womb, a reality to write about. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, huh? Way to go, Henry. All right. So I read you some first pages. We saw the woman with no toes. We saved the woman from jumping off the bridge in Bern, Switzerland. We got Jean-Jacques to give you the word, and old Henry, follow it home. So thanks for listening today. Happy Memorial Day. It's an honor, Memorial Day. I'm going to fill out my mail-in ballot tomorrow and mail it in. And I always, when I vote, I always thank those soldiers that aren't here. So thanks a lot. James J. Patterson, live from the reading room at Allen Squire Publishing. Stay well, stay happy, and please put the mask on. We don't want to do this again. Do I have to keep saying it? I drove down the street the other day and everybody's just frolicking around like there was nothing wrong. Crying out loud. Get a clue. All right, I love you guys. Hang in there.